The crimson sand of Zerion Prime's Grand Coliseum clung to Nyx Valorous like dried blood. As she struggled to her knees, the electro-whip's sting still burned across her shoulders, and her ribs screamed in protest with every labored breath. Above her, the crowd of azure-skinned Zerati roared their approval, their melodic voices creating a symphony of bloodlust that echoed off the towering crystalline walls of the arena. Nyx spat crimson into the sand and forced herself to look up at the ornate viewing platform carved into the arena's highest tier. There, draped in shimmering silks that caught the light of Zerion's twin suns, sat a Lord Kethmer Valdris, the most powerful noble on this side of the galaxy. His pale blue skin bore the intricate tattoos of high rank, and his silver eyes gleamed with cruel amusement as he watched her suffering. But it wasn't Kethmer who captured Nyx's attention. Beside him sat a figure that made her heart skip despite her pain. The woman was breathtaking, with skin like polished sapphire and hair that flowed like liquid starlight. Her name was Zera. Nyx had learned from whispered conversations among the other prisoners. She was Kethmer's newest acquisition, one in a political marriage that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with power. Their eyes met across the vast distance of the arena, and something electric passed between them. Zera's gaze held a depth of sadness that spoke of dreams crushed and freedom stolen, but beneath that sorrow, Nyx glimpsed something else, a spark of defiance that refused to be extinguished. Pathetic, Kethmer's voice boomed through the arena's amplification crystals, shattering the moment. This human specimen was supposedly a warrior on her homeworld. She can barely stand upright. Nyx gritted her teeth and pushed herself to her feet, ignoring the way her vision swam. She had been a sergeant in the Terran Colonial Marines before her transport was ambushed by slavers. Now she was entertainment, a curiosity from a primitive world, expected to die gloriously for the amusement of beings who considered her little more than an animal. Perhaps we should end her misery quickly, one of Kethmer's advisors suggested, his voice carrying the bored tone of someone discussing the weather. Where's the entertainment in that? Kethmer laughed, rising from his throne like Sate. His movement caused the crowd to fall silent, every eye turning toward their lord. No, I have a better idea. Tomorrow, this human will face my champion, Gorvik the Destroyer, in single combat. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Gorvik was legendary, a mountain of muscle and fury who had never lost a battle. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his dark purple skin crisscrossed with ritual scars that told the story of countless victories. Many in the crowd had seen him tear opponents literally in half with his bare hands. But to make things truly interesting, Kethmer continued, his silver eyes glittering with malicious pleasure, I propose a wager. He turned to Zera, and Nyx saw her stiffen as though struck. I wager my own bride on this human's defeat. Should she somehow survive, which she won't, Zera will belong to her, to do with as she pleases. The arena erupted in shocked gasps and excited chatter. Such a wager was unprecedented, even by Zerati standards. Wives, especially those of noble birth, were not gambling chips to be tossed about in games of chance. Yet none dared question Kethmer's right to do as he wished with his property. Nyx watched as Zera's composure cracked for just an instant, her luminous eyes widening before narrowing with what might have been hope. The woman recovered quickly, her face becoming an unreadable mask, but not before Nyx caught that flash of something deeper. My lord, one of the council elders ventured, his aged voice wavering with concern. Surely this is most irregular. A consort of royal blood cannot simply be. She is mine to wager as I see fit. Kethmer cut him off sharply, and the odds are overwhelmingly in my favor. Look at her. He gestured dismissively toward Nyx. This human has 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding from our interrogations, and can barely lift a practice sword. Gorvik will obliterate her before the crowd has time to settle into their seats. Despite her pain, Nyx allowed herself a small, bloody smile. She had survived 17 years in the Colonial Marines, fought in 3 interstellar conflicts, and lived through horrors these pampered aristocrats couldn't imagine. She wasn't dead yet, and as long as she drew breath, she would fight. Kethmer noticed her expression, and his own smile turned predatory. Do you find something amusing about your impending death? Human, I find it amusing, Nyx replied, her voice hoarse but clear. That you're so afraid of losing to a primitive that you've already started making excuses. The crowd fell silent at her audacity. No one spoke to Lord Kethmer with such disrespect and lived to tell about it. The noble's face darkened with rage, his hand moving instinctively to the ceremonial blade at his side. "Guards," he snarled, "return this insolent creature to her cell. Tomorrow's entertainment will be all the sweeter for her arrogance." As the arena guards moved to drag her away, Nyx kept her eyes locked on Zera's. The woman's mask had slipped again, and this time Nyx saw something that made her heart race despite the guards' rough handling, interest, attraction, and beneath it all, desperate hope. The cell they threw her into was carved from solid rock, lit by a single glowing crystal embedded in the ceiling. As the energy barrier hummed to life across the entrance, Nyx finally allowed herself to collapse onto the stone floor. Every breath was agony, and she could taste blood in her mouth. But her mind was racing. She had 18 hours until the fight. 18 hours to heal as much as possible, to plan, to find some advantage against an opponent who outweighed her by at least 100 pounds, and had never known defeat. The medical nanits in her bloodstream, military-grade enhancement, that the Zerati had somehow failed to detect, were already working to repair the worst of her injuries. But they could only do so much. More importantly, she had 18 hours to figure out why Zera's fate mattered so much to her. They had exchanged perhaps 30 seconds of eye contact, nothing more. Yet something about the woman called to her in a way she had never experienced. Perhaps it was recognition, one prisoner acknowledging another. Perhaps it was simply the basic human instinct to protect the innocent. Or perhaps, Nyx admitted to herself as she closed her eyes and tried to rest, it was something far more dangerous than either of those things. Something that could get them both killed if she wasn't careful. The crystal overhead dimmed as Zerion's twin suns set beyond the arena walls. In the gathering darkness, Nyx began to plan not just for victory, but for what might come after if she lived long enough to find out. The soft whisper of footsteps on stone woke Nyx from her fitful sleep. She tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there, before a gentle voice spoke from the shadows beyond her cell's energy barrier. "Peace, warrior. I bring aid, not harm." A slender figure stepped into the dim light, a Zerati female with pale lavender skin and the simple robes of a servant. Her eyes held kindness, a rare commodity in this place of blood and spectacle. "I am Mira," she said, softly, producing a small vial from within her robes. "I serve Lady Zera. She sent me with medicine for your pain." Nyx's heart skipped at the mention of Zera's name. Why would she help me? Mira's expression grew sad. "My lady was given to Lord Kethmer as part of a treaty between their houses. She had no choice in the matter, just as you have no choice in tomorrow's battle." The servant paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Perhaps she sees in you what she has lost, the chance to fight for freedom." The energy barrier flickered and died as Mira activated a small device. She stepped into the cell, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to stealth. "This will help with the internal bleeding and reduce the inflammation in your ribs," she explained, offering the vial. "It is a blend of Zerati healing compounds and something else, a stimulant that will sharpen your reflexes." Nyx accepted the medicine gratefully, downing it in one gulp. Almost immediately, she felt the burning pain in her chest begin to recede, replaced by a warm tingling sensation that spread through her limbs. "Tell me about Gorvik," she said, testing her range of motion as the medicine worked its magic. Mira's face darkened. "He is Lord Kethmer's prized possession, bought from the fighting pits of Morgoth Prime. 23 victories, no defeats. He favors overwhelming force over finesse, and his hide is thick enough to turn most blades." She hesitated. "But he has weaknesses. An old injury to his left knee never healed properly. He compensates by putting more weight on his right side. And his temper, when frustrated, he becomes reckless. What weapons will I be given?" "A ceremonial blade, blunted for fairness," Mira replied with obvious disgust. "Lord Kethmer ensures his champion faces no real danger." NYX nodded grimly. She had expected as much. "There's something else I need to know. Zera, is she here willingly?" Mira's laugh was bitter. "Willingly? She was traded like livestock, a token in her father's political games." Kethmer treats her as a beautiful ornament, nothing more. She has not smiled truly since arriving on Zerion Prime. And yet she risks helping me. You represent something. She thought lost forever hope. Mira moved toward the cell entrance, then paused. My lady asked me to tell you something else. She said, a warrior's greatest weapon is not strength or speed, but the will to endure when all seems lost. As Mira disappeared back into the shadows, reactivating the energy barrier behind her, Nyx felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the medicine spreading through her chest. Zara's words carried deeper meaning, not just advice for the coming battle, but a message of connection, of understanding between two souls trapped by circumstances beyond their control. The night passed slowly. Nyx alternated between light exercise to test her healing body and meditation techniques learned during her military training. The nanites in her bloodstream worked alongside Zara's medicine, knitting torn muscle and reducing swelling. She wouldn't be at full strength for tomorrow's fight, but she would be functional. More importantly, she would be motivated by something beyond mere survival. As Zerion's twin suns began to rise, painting the arena in shades of gold and crimson, Nyx heard the approaching footsteps of the guards. They came in force this time, 6 warriors in ceremonial armor, taking no chances with the human who had dared mock their lord. Time to die, alien. Their leader growled as the barrier dropped. We'll see, Nyx replied calmly, allowing them to shackle her wrists with energy bonds. They marched her through corridors carved from living rock, past tapestries depicting the great battles of Zerati history. Other prisoners watched from their cells with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. None expected to see her alive again. The arena had filled to capacity. Thousands of Zerati packed into the crystalline tears that rose like frozen waterfalls toward the sky. Their excited chatter created a musical hum that vibrated through the stone beneath Nyx's feet. She was led to a small preparation chamber beneath the arena floor, where a single weapon waited on a stone pedestal. The ceremonial blade was exactly as Mira had described, ornate, but dull, its edge barely sharp enough to cut fabric. Its balance was deliberately off, designed to handicap rather than aid. Nyx hefted it experimentally, testing its weight and feel. She had worked with worse. Above her, she could hear Kethmer's voice echoing through the arena as he addressed the crowd, building anticipation for the bloodshed to come. His words were flowery and dramatic, painting himself as a benevolent lord providing entertainment for his people, while dispensing justice to a trespasser. Citizens of Zerion Prime, his voice boomed. Today we witness the power of Zerati's superiority over the primitive races that infest our galaxy. Let none say we are not merciful. This human will be given a weapon and a chance to defend herself. Though we all know how this tale must end. The crowd roared its approval, the sound washing over Nyx like a tide of bloodlust. She closed her eyes and focused on her breathing, centering herself for what was to come. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she saw Azara's face, beautiful, sad, but touched with that spark of hope that refused to die. A gate opposite her preparation chamber began to rise, and Nyx heard the sound that had made Gorvak's reputation. It wasn't quite a roar, wasn't quite a growl, but something deeper and more primal, the hunting cry of a predator that had never known defeat. Gorvak emerged into the arena like a walking nightmare. His purple hide gleamed with ritual oils, and his massive frame cast a shadow that seemed to swallow light. The crowd's cheers reached fever pitch as their champion raised his weapons, twin warhammers that looked capable of pulverizing stone. And now, Kethmer's voice continued, let the human face the consequences of her arrogance. Nyx's gait began to rise as she stepped onto the hot sand of the arena floor. She raised her eyes to the royal box where Kethmer sat in his silk robes, smug satisfaction written across his features. Beside him, Zara sat rigidly upright, her face a careful mask of indifference. But when their eyes met across the distance, Nyx saw the truth behind the mask. Zara leaned forward almost imperceptibly, her lips moving in words only Nyx could see. Fight, live, choose. The message was clear, and it sent fire through Nyx's veins. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about choice, about freedom, about refusing to let others determine her fate. And it was about the woman whose destiny had become somehow intertwined with her own. Gorvak's war cry echoed across the arena as he began his charge, warhammers raised and ready to crush his latest victim. Nyx adjusted her grip on the ceremonial blade and smiled. Time to give the crowd a show they would never forget. The sand beneath Nyx's feet was hot from Zerion's twin suns, each grain seeming to burn through her bare soles as she faced the approaching mountain of muscle and fury that was Gorvik the Destroyer. The crowd's roar reached deafening proportions as the champion closed the distance between them, his warhammers gleaming in the brilliant light. Nyx didn't move, not yet. She watched Gorvak's gait, noting the subtle favor of his right leg that Mira had mentioned, the way his massive frame shifted with each thundering step. His charge was impressive, but predictable, raw power overwhelming any opposition through sheer force. At the last possible moment, when Gorvak's hammers descended in crushing arcs that would have pulverized her bones, Nyx rolled sideways across the sand. The weapons struck the arena floor with explosive force, sending up clouds of crimson dust and leaving deep craters where she had been standing. The crowd's cheers faltered for just an instant. This wasn't how these battles usually began. In the royal box, Lord Kethmer leaned forward, his silver eyes narrowing. "Lucky," he muttered, but Nyx caught the first hint of uncertainty in his voice. Gorvik roared his frustration and spun with surprising speed for such a massive creature. His backhand swing with the left hammer nearly caught Nyx as she rolled to her feet, the weapon's head passing close enough to her face that she felt the wind of its passage. "Stand still, little meat," Gorvik bellowed in heavily accented standard, his voice like grinding stone. "Die with honor, not planning on dying today," Nyx replied. Circling cautiously, she kept the ceremonial blade low, non-threatening, luring him into underestimating her further. Gorvik lunged again, this time leading with a straight thrust from his right hammer. Nyx sidestepped, but instead of retreating, she moved closer, inside the arc of his weapons where their massive reach worked against him. Her blade found the gap in his armor beneath his left arm, not penetrating the thick hide but delivering enough force to make him stumble. The champion's eyes widened in surprise. No opponent had ever gotten inside his guard so easily. In the royal box, Zera's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair as she watched Nyx dance around Gorvak's increasingly frantic attacks, using speed and intelligence against brute strength. "Impossible," Kethmer breathed, rising from his throne. "She should be dead by now." The battle continued, and slowly, the tide began to turn. Nyx's military training served her well. She had fought larger, stronger opponents before, and she knew that every creature, no matter how powerful, had weaknesses. She exploited Gorvak's damaged knee with quick strikes, staying mobile, forcing him to pivot and turn on the injured joint. Dark blood began to seep through the champion's armor from a dozen small wounds. None were deep enough to be immediately dangerous, but they accumulated, wearing him down like water eroding stone. His breathing became labored, his movements less precise. How Gorvik gasped during a brief lull in their deadly dance. "How? Are you still standing?" Instead of answering, Nyx pressed her attack. She had noticed something during their exchanges. When frustrated, Gorvak's discipline crumbled. He began to rely purely on rage, abandoning the techniques that had made him champion. She gave him cause for frustration. A feinted attack to his right drew him into an overextended swing. As his hammer whistled through empty air, Nyx dropped low and swept his damaged leg. The massive Zerati crashed to the sand with a sound like falling timber, his weapons skittering away across the arena floor. The crowd fell silent. Before Gorvik could recover, Nyx was on him, driving her dull blade with all her remaining strength toward the one place where even his thick hide couldn't protect him, the soft tissue beneath his jaw. The ceremonial blade, blunted though it was, found its mark with surgical precision. Gorvak's eyes widened in shock, then went dull. His massive frame shuddered once and went still. The arena remained silent for a heartbeat that seemed to stretch into eternity. Then, as if awakening from a shared dream, the crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers, gasps, and confused chatter. Many had lost substantial wagers on what should have been a certain outcome. Breathing heavily, blood streaming from her own wounds, Nyx pulled her blade free and stood, She turned slowly to face the royal box, her eyes finding Kethmer's pale, shocked face. "Impossible," the Lord repeated, his voice carrying across the silent arena. "You cheated, you must have." The human fought with the weapon provided. One of the council elders interjected, his aged voice carrying the weight of law. "By our most sacred traditions, this was a fair combat. I demand a rematch." Kethmer shouted, his composure finally cracking completely. "With whom?" The elder replied calmly. "Your champion is dead, my lord." The crowd began to murmur, the sound growing steadily louder as the full implications of what they had witnessed sank in. A human, a primitive alien, had defeated the greatest warrior Zerion Prime had ever seen. Nyx raised her bloody blade toward Kethmer, her voice carrying clearly across the arena. "I believe you wagered something of value, my lord, a debt of honor, witnessed by thousands." Kethmer's face contorted with fury and humiliation. His hand moved to his ceremonial blade, and for a moment it seemed he might challenge the outcome himself. "Guards," he finally snarled, "kill this human. She's some kind of witch. Stop." The single word cut through the commotion like a blade through silk. Zera had risen from her seat, her regal bearing suddenly apparent to all who looked upon her. She stepped forward to the railing of the royal box, her luminous eyes blazing with an inner fire that had been hidden behind her careful mask. "The wager was made before witnesses," she continued, her musical voice carrying clearly across the arena. "By our most sacred laws and traditions, it must be honored. Or does Lord Kethmer's word mean nothing?" The crowd stirred uneasily. To suggest that a noble's word was worthless was tantamount to accusing him of having no honor at all, a deadly insult in Zerati society. The elder council member, who had spoken before, rose from his seat. "Lady Zera speaks truth. The wager was legal and binding under our laws. The human has won fairly." He turned to Kethmer, his ancient eyes hard as stone. "Unless you wish to challenge the outcome yourself, my lord." For a long moment, Kethmer stood frozen, rage and calculation warring in his expression. He looked at Nyx, standing bloodied but victorious in the arena sand. He looked at Zera, no longer the compliant ornament he had thought he possessed. He looked at the crowd, waiting to see whether their lord was a creature of honor or a coward who would break his sacred word. "Very well," he said finally, his voice thick with barely controlled fury. "The human has won. Take her." He waved dismissively at Zera. She was becoming tiresome anyway. The casual cruelty of the statement sent a ripple of shocked murmurs through the crowd. Even by the standards of arranged marriages, such callous dismissal of one's spouse was considered poor form. Zera's face remained impassive, but Nyx saw her hands tremble slightly at her sides. "I accept my prize," Nyx announced loudly, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena. "And I claim the victor's right to safe passage from Zerion Prime for myself and my companion." The elder nodded gravely. "Granted, you will depart at dawn tomorrow, as is traditional." As the crowd began to disperse, chattering excitedly about the day's unprecedented events, Nyx allowed herself a moment of exhaustion. She had won not just the battle, but something far more precious. She had won Zera's freedom, and perhaps, if she was very lucky, the chance to discover what lay behind those beautiful, sad eyes. But even as triumph flooded through her, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered a warning. Men like Kethmer didn't accept defeat gracefully, especially not when their pride was involved. The safe passage granted by the elders would only protect them until dawn. After that, they would be on their own. The chamber they had given Zera in the guest quarters was luxurious by most standards: silk hangings, carved furniture, and a window overlooking Zerion Prime's sprawling capital city. But luxury could not disguise the fact that it was still a prison, and as Nyx entered, she could see the weight of years of captivity in the way Zera held herself. The two women stood facing each other across the ornate room, the magnitude of what had transpired settling between them like a living thing. Zera had changed from her formal court robes into simpler traveling clothes, practical garments. That spoke of someone preparing for an uncertain journey. "You came," Zera said softly, her luminous eyes searching Nyx's face. "Did you think I wouldn't?" Nyx replied, noting the faint tremor in Zera's voice. She had cleaned her wounds and changed into fresh clothes provided by sympathetic servants. But the exhaustion of the day's battle still weighed heavily on her shoulders. I hoped. Zera's composure wavered for a moment before she drew herself up with practiced dignity. What happens now? By law, I belong to you. But I know nothing about humans or their customs regarding property. The words seemed to stick in her throat, and Nyx felt a surge of anger at the system that could reduce someone so magnificent to a possession to be wagered and won. You don't belong to me, Nyx said firmly, stepping closer. You don't belong to anyone. What you do now, where you go, how you live, that's your choice to make. Zera stared at her as if she had spoken in an alien tongue. My choice, your choice. You can come with me when I leave this planet, or you can stay. You can go anywhere in the galaxy that strikes your fancy. You're free, Zera, truly free. For a moment, Zera said nothing. Then, to Nyx's surprise, tears began to flow down her sapphire cheeks, not tears of sorrow, but of overwhelming relief. I had forgotten, she whispered, what it felt like to have choices. Before Nyx could respond, urgent footsteps in the corridor outside made them both freeze. The sound was wrong. Too many feet, moving too fast. The door burst open without warning, and Mira stumbled inside, her servant's robes torn and her face streaked with tears. My lady, she gasped, you must flee. Now, both of you. What's happened? Zera demanded, moving to support her loyal servant. Lord Kethmer has declared the contest invalid, Mira said, struggling to catch her breath. He claims you cheated through alien sorcery. The council is meeting an emergency session, but his personal guard is already moving to arrest you both. They'll be here within minutes. Nyx cursed in 3 different languages. She had expected treachery, but not so soon. Is there another way out of the palace? The servants' passages, Mira replied, pressing a small data chip into Zera's hands. I've uploaded the route to a private docking bay where a ship waits. The pilot is sympathetic to your cause. Come with us, Zera said urgently, but Mira shook her head. Someone must delay the guards, misdirect them. I cannot abandon the other servants to Kethmer's rage. She clasped Zera's hands one final time. Live free, my lady. It will be memory enough. The sound of armored boots echoed closer now, accompanied by harsh voices and the hum of energy weapons. Time had run out. This way, Mira whispered, activating a hidden panel in the chamber's wall. Beyond lay a narrow passage lit by dim crystalline strips, barely wide enough for the people to walk abreast. They moved swiftly through the servants' corridors, guided by Mira's innate knowledge of the palace's hidden ways. Twice they had to press themselves into alcoves as guards thundered past in the main hallways, searching frantically for their escaped quarry. There, Mira pointed to a service lift that would take them down to the docking levels. From here, you're on your own. The ship is in Bay 7, a modified cargo hauler called the Stellar Wind. Tell the pilot that the dawn comes early. That's the recognition code, Nyx asked. Captain Voss is a romantic, Mira replied with a sad smile. He believes in love conquering all odds. As they descended toward the docking bay, Zera caught Nyx's hand. I need you to know, she said quietly, that what you did today, it wasn't just about winning a battle. You gave me back something I thought was lost forever. What's that? Hope. The belief that good things can happen, even in the darkest places. The lift shuddered to a stop, and the doors opened onto a vast hangar filled with spacecraft of every description. Bay 7 lay at the far end, and between them and their destination, Nyx could see Kethmer's security forces beginning to spread out in a search pattern. Stay low, Nyx whispered, drawing the energy pistol she had taken from one of the fallen guards. Move from cover to cover. They made their way between cargo containers and maintenance equipment, the sounds of pursuit growing closer with each passing moment. The Stellar Wind was exactly as Mira had described, a battered but well-maintained cargo hauler, with the look of a ship that had seen many worlds and many adventures. A man emerged from the ship's boarding ramp as they approached, tall, weathered, with the easy confidence of someone comfortable in dangerous situations. His clothes were practical spacer gear, and his eyes held the sharp intelligence of a professional smuggler. The dawn comes early, Nyx said breathlessly as they reached his position. Captain Voss nodded grimly. Then we'd better get you aboard. Before the night catches up with us." He gestured toward the ship. "Move fast, I'm picking up chatter on the security channels. They've figured out where you're headed." Even as he spoke, shouts erupted from the far side of the hangar. Searchlights began sweeping the area, and the whine of charging energy weapons filled the air. "There, Bay 7, the voice was unmistakably Kethmer, filled with rage and determination. "Go, go, go," Voss shouted, providing covering fire as Nix and Zera sprinted up the boarding ramp. Energy bolts sizzled past them, scorching the metal deck plates and filling the air with the acrid smell of burned ozone. The ship's engines roared to life even before the ramp had fully closed. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, Nix could see Kethmer himself leading the charge toward their position, his ceremonial armor gleaming in the hangar lights, his face twisted with fury. "Hold on," Voss called from the pilot's seat as the stellar wind lurched into motion. "This is going to be rough." The ship accelerated through the hangar's atmospheric barrier and into the purple-hued sky of Zerion Prime. Behind them, pursuit craft launched from military installations across the city, their sleek forms cutting through the air like silver arrows. "Can you outrun them?" Nix asked, strapping herself into the co-pilot's seat while Zera secured herself behind them. "Outrun, maybe. Outfight, definitely not." Voss's hands danced across the control panels with practiced ease. "But I know a few tricks they don't teach in the Imperial Navy." The ship dove toward the planet's surface, skimming just above the treetops of the vast forests that surrounded the capital. Energy bolts from their pursuers lit up the sky around them, but Voss's erratic flight pattern made them a difficult target. "There's a canyon system about 50 kilometers ahead," he explained, his voice tight with concentration. "If we can reach it, the rock formations will interfere with their sensors." The next few minutes were the longest of Nix's life. The stellar wind wove between mountain peaks and through narrow valleys, sometimes flying so close to the ground that branches scraped against the hull. Behind them, two of the pursuit craft crashed into the rocky terrain, their pilots unable to match Voss's desperate maneuvers. Finally, they broke through Zerion Prime's upper atmosphere and into the star-spangled darkness of space. Voss immediately began calculating a hyperspace jump, his fingers flying over the navigation computer. "Jump coordinates locked in," he announced. "Destination, Haven Colony. It's an independent world outside Zerati jurisdiction." "Thank you," Zera said softly. "Both of you. I don't know how I can ever repay this kindness." Voss glanced back at her with a gentle smile. "Lady, seeing someone choose freedom over security is payment enough for an old romantic like me." As the stars stretched into lines of light and the stellar wind leaped into hyperspace, Nix finally allowed herself to relax. They had done it, escaped Kethmer's palace, evaded his forces, and won their freedom among the stars. But even as relief flooded through her, she knew their troubles were far from over. Men like Kethmer had long memories and longer reaches. He would not give up easily, and sooner or later they would have to face him again. For now, though, they were safe, and for the first time since entering that arena, Nix had the chance to truly look at the woman beside her not as a prize to be won or a victim to be saved, but as Zera herself, beautiful and brave and finally, wonderfully free. 3 months after their escape from Zerion Prime, Nix stood on the observation deck of Haven Colony's central hub, watching the sunrise paint the artificial sky in shades of gold and amber. The Independent Space Station orbited a gas giant in the Kepler sector, far from the reach of any major galactic power. It was a haven for refugees, outcasts, and anyone seeking a fresh start among the stars. Behind her, she heard the soft whisper of approaching footsteps, and she didn't need to turn to know who it was. In the months they had spent together aboard the Stellar Wind, and then here on Haven Colony, she had learned to recognize the particular rhythm of Zera's gait, the way she moved with unconscious grace even in the station's artificial gravity. "You're up early," Zera said softly, coming to stand beside her at the viewport. Her sapphire skin seemed to glow in the dawn light, and she had abandoned the formal clothing of Zerati nobility for simple, practical garments that somehow made her even more beautiful. "Couldn't sleep," Nix admitted. "I keep thinking about what Voss told us yesterday." Captain Voss had brought disturbing news during his latest supply run. Kethmer hadn't given up his pursuit as they had hoped. Instead, he had hired an army of bounty hunters and mercenaries, offering a fortune for their capture alive. More troubling still were reports that he had allied himself with the Syndicate, a criminal organization with resources that rivaled some planetary governments. "He'll never stop hunting us, will he?" Zera asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Men like him don't know how to let go." Nix replied, "His pride won't let him accept that he lost." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the station's inhabitants begin their daily routines in the habitat rings below. Haven Colony was home to dozens of species, from across the galaxy, refugees from wars, outcasts from rigid societies, dreamers seeking new worlds to explore. It was a place where the past didn't matter as much as what you chose to do with your future. "NYX," Zera said suddenly, her voice carrying a note of resolve that made Nix turn to look at her. "I've been thinking about what happens next. Oh, we can't run forever. Eventually, Kethmer or his agents will track us down, and when they do..." She trailed off, but the implication was clear. As long as they remained fugitives, they would never truly be free. "What are you suggesting?" Zera's luminous eyes met hers. "We face him, on our terms, in a place of our choosing." Before Nix could respond, an alarm began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed the corridor in red as an automated voice announced, "All residents to secure positions. Incoming vessels of unknown configuration." This is not a drill. They rushed to the nearest command center, where Administrator Chen, a stern-faced woman who had helped establish Haven Colony as a neutral refuge, was coordinating the station's response. The main display showed 3 sleek warships approaching the station, their hulls bearing the distinctive markings of Zerati military forces. "How did they find us?" someone whispered. "It doesn't matter," Chen replied grimly. "They're demanding we turn over to fugitives a human female and a Zerati noble. They claim authority under interstellar fugitive recovery laws." "Haven Colony doesn't recognize those laws," another voice protested. "No, but we also don't have the firepower to fight off 3 military cruisers," Chen replied. "I'm sorry, but we may have no choice but to comply." "Wait," Nix said, stepping forward. "Let me talk to them." Chen hesitated, then nodded. "Open a channel." The main display shimmered and resolved into the image of a figure that made Nix's blood boil. Kethmer sat on the bridge of the lead cruiser, his silver eyes glittering with malicious satisfaction. Behind him stood figures in the black uniforms of Syndicate operatives, his new allies. "How touching," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "The happy couple, together at last. I trust you've enjoyed your little vacation among the stars." "What do you want, Kethmer?" Nix demanded. "What I've always wanted. What belongs to me." His gaze shifted to Zera, and his expression hardened. "Return my property, and I might be merciful to these people who have harbored you. I belong to no one," Zera said, stepping into view of the display. "You lost any claim to me when you wagered me like a gambling chip." Kethmer's face contorted with rage. "You are my wife under Zerati law. That contract supersedes any arena games or colonial independence declarations." "Then let's settle this the old way," Nix interjected, an idea forming in her mind. "Single combat. You and me, winner takes all. You've already proven you can defeat my champions through trickery," Kethmer snarled. "Why would I give you another chance to cheat?" "Because," Zera said, her voice carrying across the bridge with regal authority, "under the ancient laws you claim to uphold, any spouse may demand trial by combat to dissolve an unwanted marriage. I invoke that right, with Nix Valorous as my champion." A murmur went through both Kethmer's bridge crew and the Haven Colony Command Center. The law Zera had invoked was old, predating modern Zerati civilization, but it had never formally been repealed. "Furthermore," Zera continued, "if my champion wins, you will release all claims upon me and withdraw from this system. If she loses..." She paused, the weight of what she was offering clear to everyone listening. "I will return with you." "Willingly," Kethmer's eyes glittered with anticipation. "And if I refuse this challenge?" Then you prove yourself a coward who hides behind hired guns, rather than face his opponents with honor, Nyx replied. I'm sure the noble houses of Zerion Prime will be fascinated to learn that their military forces are being used to collect a lord's runaway wife. The insult hit home. Kethmer's face flushed with anger, and Nyx could see his pride warring with his caution. Finally, his arrogance won out. Very well, he said through gritted teeth. Single combat, on the surface of Haven Colony's moon. But this time, I choose the weapons, and there will be no Rena tricks to save you. 2 hours later, Nyx stood on the airless surface of Heaven's moon, sealed in a borrowed environmental suit and armed with a plasma rifle, Kethmer's weapon of choice. The low gravity made her movements feel strange, but she had trained in similar conditions during her military service. Across the small crater they had chosen as their battlefield, Kethmer waited in ornate armor that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. His own plasma rifle was a work of art, its crystal focusing array gleaming in the light of the gas giant overhead. Representatives from both sides watched from a safe distance. Zera and Captain Voss for the colonists, syndicate operatives for Kethmer. Administrator Chen served as the neutral arbiter, her voice crackling over the comm system. Combat will end when one participant yields or is incapacitated, she announced. Are both parties ready? Ready, Nyx replied, checking her weapon's charge level one final time. Ready, Kethmer echoed, his voice tight with anticipation. Begin. Kethmer fired first, his shot going wide as Nyx dove behind a boulder. Chunks of rock exploded around her as he continued firing, his shots precise but hampered by his eagerness to end the fight quickly. Nyx waited, analyzing his pattern. Kethmer was a good shot, but not a soldier. He lacked the patience and discipline that combat required. When he paused to cool his overheated weapon, she made her move. Rolling from cover, she fired a burst that forced him to dive for his own shelter. Then began a deadly game of cat and mouse among the moon's rocky terrain, each combatant trying to outmaneuver the other in the low-gravity environment. The battle might have continued for hours, if not for Kethmer's fundamental weakness, his need to prove his superiority. Growing frustrated by Nyx's refusal to engage in a direct firefight, he abandoned his cover and charged across the open ground between them, firing wildly. It was exactly the mistake Nyx had been waiting for. Her shot took him in the chest, overloading his armor's energy systems and sending him crashing to the lunar surface. He tried to rise, failed, and fell back with a groan.